All right. Hi, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Morgan, and this is a talk I host twice a week to discuss my experiences on the path of soul transcendence. This offering is brought to you by the movement of spiritual inner awareness with the encouragement and support of John Morton, who holds the mystical traveler consciousness, which is the spiritual consciousness that allows us to do the work that we're doing here this evening. If you're new to the call, the format is simple. We're going to start by calling ourselves forward into the light, which is calling our awareness forward into the light of God that's already present. And then we're going to chant three Anai hues. Hue is an ancient name for God, and Anai invokes a quality of empathy and compassion. And then I'm going to play a video clip from my teacher, John Roger. And then I'm going to do a reading from Shik Abulhassan of Karakan. And then we can talk about whatever you would like. So let me start by calling us forward into the light, and then we'll chant Anai Hugh with a beautiful audio track. Beloved Father, Mother God, Lord God of all creation, we call ourselves forward into your most precious presence, into your love, light, and sound, asking for the light of the Holy Spirit and the light of the Christ to fill, surround, and protect this gathering and everyone here, so that only that which is for the highest good will take place. We open ourselves at this time to receive of your guidance, your healing, and your clearing, and we ask that any karma or negativity that can be lifted be taken into the highest realms of light and dispersed into the nothingness from which it came. We do this session in the presence and under the guidance of the mystical traveler consciousness, and we also ask this consciousness to remove any doubts, fears, or negativity that would stand in the way of all that has been prepared for us at this time, and always for the highest good of all concerned. And Lord, we ask that you infuse all that we're doing here, that the light and presence of John Roger envelop this action, that the light of the Christ fill every level, layer, and aspect of our being, that our eyes be single, that our intention be clear, that we keep our eyes on the Lord. And we ask that this light that calls forward within us, this loving that we are, radiate out into all who we touch and all who they touch, until all sentient beings on the planet are filled with joy and peace. And we are so grateful, for we know that the blessings already are. We know that you're present amongst us in our comings and our goings and in each breath. And the loving that is full, that whole spirit, that Holy Spirit, that we take it into us and receive of it. For we know that above all your will is done, and for this we give our thanks. Berush Beshan.
Inside of us, there is a point wherein the spirit meets that part that we call who we are. Now I'm using the word spirit and soul interchangeably here. who you are as the being that is real and eternal has to meet at some point the being that is here that is temporary. And that point is a point of convergence, a point of concentration, a point of attention. And as soon as we hear about a spiritual thing or a traveler or a God or a Savior or a Christ, some part of us gathers inside a knowing of what that is we're talking about. Like, I know that. But if we say, what is it? You say, well, I just know, and that'll be it for today. That point of convergence is the point wherein what we call the traveler consciousness meets with your human consciousness. Those things are always together. But we don't know that because they don't move. Within that statement's a fundamental security, fundamental, where you just feel strong, secure there. And that is the knowledge that you have of knowing that that spirit's connected to a supreme type of force or being called God, if you want to call it that, or a first principle. I call it that which is. And to know that that which is has always been that which is and will always be that, and you're also that hanging out.
And now a word from Sheikh Abulhassan of Karakan. I do not tell you to put in effort, but you need to remember who the doer is. You can trade only with God's capital, and when you offer it in return, you are taken in as one returning home. In the beginning, you have Him only, and so it will be at the end, and in the middle, there's none else. One who claims this place as his won't find his way there. Okay, we already have some folks raising hands. Wendy Kunkel.
Hi, Jeffrey. Thank you. God bless you.
Hi.
Um, I have kind of a two-part question that I think mixes in. One is 10%.
Okay.
So I asked a question about 6 months ago where I've been having, I had a leg injury related to my back and some sciatica. And so it's 90% healed. It's been a journey, but the bigger, and thank you for your help, Ben, and everyone who's helped me, lots of resources inside and outside. I am open to anything that you and Spirit have for me at any level, I'll just say. But obviously I want, or of course, I definitely want to continue improving my health. And I just started another cleanse because my body's been in an ultra sensitive state where, sitting's been challenging, laying down, walking, like just, it's been, I say that I'm on the scale of very sensitive, and I've been on my very sensitive of the very sensitive scale. So the question that came up for me today was, and again, I'm open to anything else Spirit would have, but is there a way that I can get to a higher level? Like an identity, if I have a belief or identity that health is hard or life is hard, and I've been working on my health since birth, pretty much 5 months in, hit some, came in with a bang. And gratefully, I'm very grateful for the health that I have. And I would like to have more health. I would like to have more energy, more ease for the highest good. And I'm in better cooperation with the process. I have attained a lot of skills and value. So anyway, but I'm wondering if I'm creating a ceiling with a belief or karma or identity. And then the second part of the question I'll just put out is related to JR, what JR just shared in your home. I really do want, it's my greater prayer is to get beyond the 10%, to make the 90% a greater part of my focus in my life. And the 10% is part of it. So I'm cooperating. And yeah, I really want to open to spirit, to the knowing, to the trust that this is for me, all of that. So I think you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Just preparing in case I get thirsty.
I have some water here too. Cheers.
Cheers. Um, as far as physical health, there's a couple of angles that we tend to overlook in the process. Um, I can only imagine you've gone to limitless practitioners with limitless modalities and ways of looking at things. What was it in your birth that was such a bang?
Um, I came in allergic to well, I was taken off breastfeeding at 5 months, and I was allergic to the food they fed me. Milk and rice were two that they discovered, and a whole bunch of other sensitivities to toxins later. So I was just super sensitive, and I got very significant severe bronchitis and asthma, and I couldn't breathe, and it was very dramatic. And I got hospitalized in a croup tent for almost a week, and like a little isolated to help me breathe and recover from it. But my consciousness thinks it was very dramatic um and yeah, lung related.
Yeah. What's interesting, so in situations like that that are pretty traumatic, sometimes the what's kind of hiding in plain sight with me is that it's somebody else's. And that's so immediately as you were talking about your birth, there's ways in which you had emotions, thoughts, experiences trapped in the body and various organs and various systems, being forced to go off breastfeeding or being fed what's poisonous or toxic. That in itself also has an emotional component to it. Loss of control, shock, horror, all those different things that can be trapped in the body. One thing that we don't tend to look at, though, when we're clearing in those areas is the degree to which those experiences may be inherited through the psychic genetic level from parents or transmitted in utero from interactions during the gestation. And then, in addition, things that can be picked up from other children or other parents within the hospital setting. So it's possible we pick things up. One thing that I've found in working with people is I've worked with people oftentimes that, and I don't know why people wait to come to me after they've tried everything in the world, and I'm like, oh, got it, you brought me the easy one, you know? But I guess it's a compliment in some capacity. It's also like, oh my God, am I being set up to fail? Um, but the what I came to discover in many cases is people were banging their head against the wall trying to solve their problem, trying to clear their issue, and then they discovered that the issue actually resides in another body, and it can even be in a body that's deceased. So it could be like a dead relative, but you picked it up as almost like a computer program, and then you're banging up against it. And that could be a computer program called, pain. That could be one called allergy, that could be one called sensitivity, and you're working it and working it and working it and trying to solve it. But what I've discovered in that context is, so what'll often happen is you work with somebody and you'll find that they're tying into somebody else's kidney meridian or something like that. And then you'll try and clear all their issues because they're showing all these issues around kidney meridian. And you'll clear and clear and clear over and over and over, and nothing, it'll never finally move until you finally go, wait a minute, am I even perceiving your kidney, or is it this other person's kidney? And then when you disengage from it, or if you clear them inside of you, like you heal the them that's inside of you, then all of a sudden it releases. But it's almost like you can't really work it except at the point of origin. It becomes like a hydra, if you're not at the root. So what came forward when you were sharing, and you might consider just looking at the crazy idea that maybe you've been working somebody else's program. And then, because I have a more of a non-dualistic perspective, I wouldn't say that's the end of the story, because we tend to have this type of entanglement as a mechanism to bring to our awareness those people that we can clear inside of us. It's amazing. Some of the physical issues that we have are just simply karmic curriculum. It's just some people come in with, you know, I have a very, very close friend who had even talked to JR, who basically told her she has less life force than most people, like very little, it's just, that's just what she came in to experience. And so it's, there are other aspects of karma that will come easy to that person, miraculous, serendipitous. People would look and be like, man, that person is so lucky. How could things just fall into their lap? But then on the other hand, they've got this body that could just collapse at any time. And you go, well, what would you choose, your health or this other karma? And it's a terrible choice. And at the end of the day, we're kind of left with the best approach being something like, thank you, Lord, for this that I have come to work. And in the context of what you're dealing with, you the tricky part is, if the root cause is something that is transmitted and doesn't originate in you at a very, very young age, what happens is, this is what I've observed. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a health practitioner, so take all this with a big fat grain of salt. But what it looks like energetically is kind of like consciousness, the body, um, it sort of layers on top of itself. Identity is this layering process. And what'll happen is, if a part of the foundation, say, came from someone else, like say at that very early developmental stage, you pick up something and it starts to incorporate it into that ground floor, you might get 4 or 5 stories deep and you're standing on the roof going, why does this thing seem lopsided and off? Like, what's going on? And unfortunately, you kind of built a lot of your definitional realities of your life based upon something you picked up that wasn't yours in the first place. So you're left with a trick. The trickiness of it is, and when I've worked with people who are dealing with something like that, in that type of situation, you kind of have to dismantle that part of the house in order to get to the foundation to then pull out the one that's not there. It's not just a simple like, oh, cool, it's gone. Now, sometimes through the field of the mystical traveler consciousness and spirit, it can be that quick. And there are people who I know who, they've gone to retreats with John Roger, and they will have just lost a relative like a mother, and they'll choose to go to the retreat anyway. And that entire grief pattern and all of their entanglements and all the stuff they got with their mother goes in 24 hours. They wake up the next day, they feel nothing but loving for that person. And it's like, wow, that can happen. So I don't want to program into this like, oh, this has to be hard. I get the sense that you have a little bit of that programming, oh, this has to be hard anyway. So I don't think you need that from me. But I will say, from a compassion perspective, sometimes the only way to clear some of these repetitive patterns in a person's life is to go into that level, that foundational early developmental level, and figure out if something got lodged in there that isn't really yours. And then you have to be willing to let go of all the parts of the I am that might be there, the false, the lower self, all the parts of the personality ego level that are tied to that foundation. And that can be really, I mean, I'm saying this as somebody who's gone through this. You feel like a part of you is dying. Now it's not, it's not what's really going on, but it certainly feels like a death. And there can be grief in there because that part of you that you realize, like, well, in order to let this go, I have to also be willing to let go of this other part that I think is kind of nice, you know, and I kind of like that piece of it. So, so that's what I would say in terms of like some of the areas you've been exploring on the physical level. There seems to be something that happened in that early 1 to 6 month window that then set you on a developmental track with your nervous system with a couple of other dimensions.
May I?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool.
So I heard I actually was very blessed to meet Ella Vivian before she
Oh,
left the planet.
nice.
Yes, incredible gift. And she shared something that then Michael Hayes helped me
Oh,
clarify.
cool.
But but there was something in utero where um she's told me one thing and Michael Hayes clarified it. Like my mom's basic self got scared. So there was a part of a what I perceived as a rejection by her mom by and like she changed her mind is how Ella Vivian said it to me. And Michael Hayes
Yeah.
said it was more like her basic self got scared and in utero. So I've worked with that.
That one. Yeah.
And so you're maybe
I'm
there's
I'm suggesting there's something when you after you were born in the way that you were handled and the energy field around you. Now, what will often happen is there's kind of an accretion process where that first trauma then becomes the thing that other things can hook on. So you probably cleared a chunk of it just by doing this other thing earlier on in your development. So that everything you described makes perfect sense. And I'm suggesting there might be something else that got entangled in your nervous system.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the suggestion.
And then your other question, I think you talked about wanting to be more present with the 90% as you're walking through the 10%, something like that.
Yeah, like the 10% because of this pattern, perhaps it's health feeling hard, like the identities that I've related
Yeah.
to that I'm doing my best to
It
let go.
feels it feels all encompassing, like pain.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
hard part about being here. So the
Yeah. And
10%
and
felt like a lot of work.
and pain has a very interesting way of getting our attention. Um, so okay. So as far as there seems to be there's a way in which we create a false dichotomy. Um, and and I've let's say I tormented myself with that dichotomy for a long time, which is called if I'm doing my physical level, I'm not doing the 90% level or something like that. And I talked about this the other day. I was reading about Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, and I was really touched by this concept that when somebody reaches non-dualistic reality, like experiences true reality, they're called a jnani, like a jnani, somebody who has knowledge of true reality or that which is. But they talk about taking it a step further, where when you've reached that reality, let's say you're anchored in soul consciousness, right? There's a way in which you come back and you see God everywhere. So, whereas in the past, in the context of Hinduism, you would have shunned and been disgusted by idolatry. You would have been like, why are you focusing on a stone figure when God is beyond time and space? And you have this disdain for it. But then you come back, if you can re-enter and become what's called a Vijnani, and you re-enter reality, you start to see God everywhere and you don't really see the difference. You kind of go, oh yeah, I mean, look, if you want to put food in front of a an elephant-shaped statue, or if you want to, you know, do your genuflection and your communion, that's cool. It's all God. But then you start seeing like, well, waiting in line at the bank, that's God too. And going to the doctor's appointment, that's also God. And so for me, the real key was I stopped. I used to worry so much about going off and not getting enough spiritual exercise and all that kind of stuff until I realized that my entire life could be a spiritual exercise, and that spiritual exercises, in terms of the practice of sitting down, is just a gift that I give myself. It's 10% of my day, ideally 2 hours, if I can, which is rare, that I give myself. It's a tithe to my soul consciousness. It's a gift that I give myself, but it's not different from, better than, right and right. It's like that dimension shifts, and it's less about. It's like the illusion of space goes away. Like there's not a there and a here. There's just a God presence. Now, the interesting thing for me is the way that I've experienced it more fully and actively, even in the 10% level, is infusing it into my experience of the 10% level. So in the case of like if I'm going to a doctor's appointment, I'm visualizing the Christ entering and illuminating every object in the room, every person in the room. It's like a way in which we integrate that into the reality of our experience. And I'm sure you do that all the time anyway. And at the same time, I think that there's there's a story that we tell ourselves that says, oh well, the physical level is crude, and the 10% level and the 90% level is spiritual, and you create this dichotomy. But there's this wonderful seminar I think you'd like, called Spiritual Healing. I think it's a SAT. If you haven't listened to it, Spiritual Healing. Maybe somebody can put a link. And if you're not a SAT subscriber, you should become a SAT subscriber.
I will. Yes. Whatever
I
I
don't know.
believe
I know not for you,
with
but I'm just
everybody.
saying because somebody's going to post a link and go, "Hey, what gives? I can't access this," and that just means you get to have your mind blown monthly with really good content. So sign up. So all of that, in the seminar Spiritual Healing, there was one part I recall that really stuck with me in the very beginning, where people often judge the physical level as not a spiritual level, but really the physical level is a spiritual level. It's just a very dense one. Now, uh, there are other dimensions that feel arguably less spiritual than the physical. Um, I've seen some subatomic levels that were not particularly pleasant, and other universes that were not particularly pleasant. But it's important to realize that we are the presence that spiritualizes our reality. And it's like people have asked me, are there holy places on the planet? And in a sense, they're holy by nature of the consciousness that touches them. So it's like a place can become charged with a spiritual consciousness, but it's because a person with a soul, or a soul with a person, anchored that non-magnetic light into the magnetic field, and it changed the structure of everything. But it's important, I think, especially for those who are anchored in soul consciousness, to recognize that there is an opportunity to be the God of our own inner reality. That if the soul is the entire ocean of love and mercy in a drop, expressed and individuated, you have all that you need to spiritualize that which you experience. So I guess my attitude is more of a, it's more about an attitude shift, I'd say, or a way of looking. And what I found is when my attitude is in alignment that way, the Spirit comes to meet me. And it's not, I've always, in a sense, struggled with the notion of sending the light because when I'm in that presence, I just can't find a place where God isn't. And therefore, I can't find a place where the light isn't. So the whole notion of sending the light is like, okay, so I've concocted in my mind that there's a place where the light isn't, and that somehow me doing that, well, so I came to realize that really what it is a spiritualization, a transcendence, a transmutation of the part of me that is that place. So if I send the light to the Middle East, I'm really sending the light to the Middle East in me. And then is a level at which we make ourselves available to intercessory work and give over the reins to our consciousness, to the Spirit, and say, use me as you will for the action of the Christ, for the action of the highest good of all concerned. And that can happen as well. To a large extent, that consciousness and that intention of service carries with it its own protection. And sometimes when I'm experiencing suffering, and I do experience suffering, when I experience suffering, that entering into service, despite my desire to isolate, you know, I can be such a curmudgeon if I let myself. I just shut the door. Don't want to be around anyone. But when, in a sense, in defiance of that, I choose to hold myself out as a sacrifice to God. Let this being, let this consciousness be of service to you, Lord, whatever you will do. Then there's something that seems to shift in my consciousness, and there's a lot of healing that takes place in that process. And it's odd because sometimes the medicine is the one thing that we don't want to necessarily do. Like if we had our druthers, I'd rather stay put and relax. But then sometimes getting up and just serving and connecting with people will shift it and clear it. And there is a protection that comes in, but I found that the protection is also somewhat limited by the story we tell ourselves. So if we say, oh, yeah, I'm somebody who picks up a lot of stuff when I do this, then lo and behold, you pick up a lot of stuff when you do this. Now, if instead the story is, hey, I'm with the band, you go to the front of the line, I'm with the band, I'm doing service for the, if you have an issue with this, take it up with my boss. Goes by the name of JC, You know what I mean? At that point, it goes, I find that the energy just flows differently. It's my whole reality looks different. The colors that I see have a different hue. And and I think you're right. It goes back to that poem that I read in the beginning. I always have to remind myself that when I am wise, I allow God to do for me. I don't claim to be the doer. I participate in the action of spirit. Because if I claim it, then I have to bear the burden of that. And my experience of consciousness as we get into more and more refined frequencies of spirit, it's less and less about me doing anything and more about me letting go of that whole story of doing and me and all that stuff and just simply bearing witness to and being filled and encompassed by a consciousness that has its own divine intelligence.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Lots to receive. And one piece I want to anchor is the releasing you called it dichotomy. That's not my normal word, but like the paradox
Separation, the separation or the
of my humanity and divinity and just really yeah, the prayer to see it all as God and spirit.
and yes, from a consciousness of soul to see to be God seeing.
Well, thank you for exampling, Jeffrey, and for all your loving and wisdom. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. God bless you. Okay, uh, Wendy, part two.
We actually spent time at Living in Grace the year before last too. It was fun. Yeah, so my name's Wendy, and I have a question. Someone was having trouble formulating a question the other day, and you said, "Is it about freedom from worry?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my question." So I think I have had a lot of that since I was young. My mum said and it sort of manifests by this shallow breathing and this tightness. And mum said I used to hold my breath when I was little. She used to put me under the tap to breathe.
And are you
Um,
are you aware of any negative anticipation? Like, do you visualize negative images or anything like that, or what's the experience like?
yeah, sometimes. So at the moment, I'm in the process of organising to sell my mother's house. And then my sister is complaining that I'm not going about it the right way. And so I think I
Yeah.
was then like, oh
Sisters are good
no.
at that.
Yeah, yeah. So I saw a solicitor yesterday. Oh, I spoke to one and I was like, oh, okay, now I can relax. But up until then, I was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? So yeah, I think I do that a bit, like anticipating the negative. But yeah, sometimes it doesn't even seem to be based on something. It's almost, I wake up in the morning and it's like, my sleep is quite out. I wake up quite often. I mean, I'm appreciating that I, get to tune in at 3 a.m. over here to John and, do Walking in the Light, SEs. So I'm certainly working really closely with spirit and tuning into spirit to assist me, but maybe it's childhood stuff too. My grandmother had a nervous breakdown after my grandfather died, and quite significant mental health stuff like padded cell in a mental institution. And
Yeah.
then she lived by herself. So I was sent around. My parents lived a block from my parents. So I was sent around to look after her at night so that she didn't do all weird things and set the house on fire or anything like that. So I think
And
I've had a bit on my plate from when I was young.
and what has your relationship been with your intuition from a young age?
Pretty good. Yeah. So
But
when I,
fairly strong capability, yeah?
yeah, not obviously, I don't see things
No, no,
but
no.
like I'm in the
But do you have
process of
you
like,
get senses? You get like a sense?
yeah. So I previously lived in a house, a beautiful house on a block of land on acreage. And I don't know, I drove down a road that I don't go to work down. There was one way I went to work and there was this divergent road. I went down the other road and found a block of land that we bought and loved. And yeah, so that thing happens to me all the time, like I
Yeah.
dream about what's likely to happen or yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think oftentimes it's interesting, at least in my experience, because I was born with a lot of intuition, let's say. When I initially experienced intuition, I had thought it was kind of a curse because I was just seeing a lot of problems everywhere.
Mm,
So that that experience could create things like anxiety or worry, or, for example, like if I saw negativity on somebody and say that somebody was, my preschool teacher or something, that would really bother me.
mm.
Or
I had my tonsils out when I was young and I, hemorrhaged and everything. And not long after, when I went to school, I coloured an angel in green, which I'm sure I saw a green angel, but then the teacher went mad at me and said it was ugly and made me go next door and show the class how ugly that angel was.
got
Pretty
it.
strange thing for a teacher to do. Yeah.
No, no,
So,
I mean when, people do strange things when they're under the influence of negativity.
yeah.
No, so what I was going to tell you is I think for me, the big turning point was when I realized the things were being shown to me not so that I would judge them or feel afflicted by them, but because I was uniquely qualified to work with them spiritually, work with them in the light. So, for example, instead of the negative anticipation, I would start to see the light or the Christ or the Spirit entering into that situation or working with the different areas. One of the things that our mind does that gets in the way of what I'm talking about is you will imagine a negative image and then you'll talk yourself out of whatever your negative sense is. Now, it may be that you don't have a vocabulary. Like, for example, you mentioned your grandmother had a nervous breakdown, the whole thing like that. I would wager to guess that there what hasn't really been a very good vocabulary for the intuition that your family has innate in the psychic genetic level, and that
Yeah,
people probably have all had something like that for generations. But
yeah,
my point in mentioning that is um, what happens is the mind and society will program us to either ignore or treat as a problem the things that we perceive. What in fact you may be perceiving, and one thing you may realize is if your basic self is aware that you're perceiving it and you're ignoring that, it will ramp up the volume of the alert because you're not doing anything about it.
yeah.
So, for example, if you perceive something off energetically with selling the house, and your
Mm,
sister is doing this, or there's some negativity coming through your sister, you may be getting an early warning about that, and then you can start to ask for the light, ask for the Christ to enter the land and clear it, ask for the Christ to enter the house and clear it. You start to visualize light pouring in, and you start to work with that, and you may find that your body starts to calm down because your basic self starts going, "Oh God, she's finally listening."
I'm
Because
actually, I'm actually here today at my mum's house. I took the day off work,
yeah,
and some MSIA ministers are coming up to do a house blessing this
yeah.
afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes what I perceive as some of what you're calling anxiety is
Mm,
simply a louder version of your consciousness trying to get your attention because something's off energetically.
mm. My mind goes, like has conversations about, what I could say and, to the next,
Yeah,
to
see
people
that
coming up, or it's replaying the part, like,
I
so
don't
it's
think
just,
your mind is helpful in this equation.
no,
I,
it talks a
I, I
lot.
yeah, I think I would skip the mind part and think of it more like if you saw crumbs on the table and you just kind of wipe them up. Like, do you really think long and hard about crumbs on the table, or do you just kind of
No.
wipe, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, look, there's something to clear with the house. Okay, great. Well, what's to clear with the house? And then you just follow the breadcrumbs. Like you talked about that entire process of how you follow the breadcrumbs in your life. That's the way you experience intuition. Like you follow the
Mm,
breadcrumbs, and then all of a sudden you're at your new house or your new land. You follow the
mm,
breadcrumbs, and you have that, and you're in that new relationship or that new, that new job or like whatever it is. You follow breadcrumbs.
mm,
That's a form of intuition. But what I'm saying is the consciousness, and this is true of a lot of people probably on the call, is we tend to dismiss or edit or interpret or try to control intuitions that we get rather than simply listening, loving. And does it really hurt to send light? Does it really hurt to visualize loving pouring over all of it? Does it really hurt? Instead, we say, oh, it's not good. I shouldn't think negative things about that person. Well, maybe you're not thinking negative things about that person. Maybe you're perceiving negativity on that person, in which case you have the ability to call forward the light and see that person just bathed in light and
mm,
see the Christ hold them, see the beloved hold them, see all of that releasing that goes on. And then all of a sudden it calms down inside of you and you
mm,
go, oh, okay, I can breathe now. I would hypothesize, and I'm here every Tuesday, so you can come back and call me a liar. But my hypothesis is all the symptoms will calm down when you make it completely safe and okay and you listen real well to the intuitions that you get about the energetic and what's off and what needs maybe some loving, some care to shift
mm,
the energetic dynamic, what
mm.
needs to be cleared. If you start to actually listen to that in a way that doesn't require your basic self to yell at you through a nerve response, I bet that you'll have a lot more peaceful experience.
Uh-huh.
And if you need to do forgiveness on, visualize yourself as your teacher, do self-forgiveness, go back into the scene and see JR come in and correct your teacher and applaud you in front of the whole class for your beautiful angel and confirm that that in fact was the angel who was working on your tonsils. You see what I'm saying? Like you can go in and heal all of that, but you don't need to carry that all with you. And the
Yeah.
nervous response becomes you have this intuitive, natural expression energetically, and you have this other part of you that's been programmed in to edit and shut you up and smack you into place. And that's where you're seeing a nerve response where there's this kind of whiplash between the two. But the more you can create that safety and the more that you can be totally fine with living in Crazy Town and loving it and enjoying it and blessing every ounce of it, then I think you'll find the anxiety and worry will subside.
Yeah,
And
interestingly, my dreams, which I used to have lots of vivid dreams, which I could gather information, just have sort of stopped. I'm not remembering many dreams anymore.
mm,
But as I said, I'm not sleeping
the other
that
thing
long.
is, oftentimes if you're thinking like you'll cycle on something that's not
Yeah, I
resolved,
do. Yeah,
yeah, so that one is basically because you haven't seen the truth. So your consciousness is not going to let you release it, not going to let you just let it pass until you've seen the truth.
right.
Now, in order to do that, you need to change the perspective. You need to completely turn it on its head. It won't
Right.
work. It won't work if you look at the dynamic as kind of like, um, it won't work as if you look at it as a problem to solve within the context of your story.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like go all over the place, be contrarian. Well, maybe I completely misinterpreted it, or maybe I was the one who was the aggressor, or maybe I accused her, or maybe there was something that you see, you start playing with all kinds of crazy changes in perspective. And once you hit it, usually it will just let go and go, oh, that's what it was. It had nothing to do with me. She was actually arguing with our mother through me.
Yeah.
It's like click, and then you stop thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, my dad passed when she was 10, 11. And so an auntie said she often raises the fact my brother and I are close, 3 years apart, and she's 10 years younger than me. And so she feels like we got to spend more time with my dad and she missed out. And so I think there's
That might
some,
be. Or
yeah.
or try some other crazy things.
Yeah,
If
okay.
it's still stuck, if it's still
Yeah,
stuck, it means you didn't
it's
hit
not
it.
shifting. Yeah, okay.
So
Try something
so
else.
so it's called avoid Einstein's definition of insanity.
Yeah,
Don't try doing the same thing over and over and over thinking you're going to get a different result.
yeah,
Start changing the angle, start letting go of the story because the only story that's true is that we are God, that
yeah.
we are that which is. So
Right.
the rest of it is fair game as far as I'm concerned. It's all about what will move the energy. And if the energy ain't moving, that ain't gonna work. You
Okay,
gotta
try
find
something
the
else.
you gotta find the combination lock that's gonna click that loose.
Right. Okay. Yep, I can do that.
But you can have
With
fun with it too.
spirits help. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you can ask God to show you the truth. That's you gotta be real brave though. Because
yeah.
show me the truth also means regardless of I'm okay with seeing that it was all me. I'm okay with seeing that I made this up. I'm okay. So it's if you ask to be shown the truth, you have to be willing to consider anything, even
Yeah.
something that would fly in the face of your ego story.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there were times, I didn't treat her as well as I could have. Stuff I said that wasn't as great as it could have been. My dad, the same. So, like,
You're not being out there enough. You gotta think of other that all of that made too much sense. You gotta go a little bit crazier. Go a little bit crazy.
okay,
I'm telling you, when you land on it,
okay,
it's crazy. You have to ask the weird questions. Maybe she's never interacted with me in my entire life. She was only interacting with dad. Maybe, it's like you go through all these different
okay,
possibilities that defy
okay,
reality, and then
okay.
eventually something will click and you go, wow, that's what it actually was. and you'll know it in your bones. You'll be like, yeah, that's what it actually was, and then it'll release.
Okay.
Just try
All
it.
right. Sounds
Just
like
try it.
fun.
Not just the one that makes sense.
Makes
Making
sense.
the stuff that works very seldom makes sense. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that works, and sometimes it's just really weird, but it works, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it still messes me up. Like some of the most effective methods I have ever found for clearing or otherwise are ridiculously simple. And then I go, it can't possibly be that easy. I spent all those years doing this, and all I had to do was do this, this, and this, and then it cleared. And you're like, yeah, sometimes whatever works, works. And you don't have to worry about sounding stupid or sounding
Yeah.
crazy because at the end of the day, either it's going to work or it's not going to work. So who cares?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Experiment. Okay. Sounds like fun. Thank
Yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah.
God bless
Have fun. I love it.
you. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Elizabeth McGinn or whomever.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I thought the time was up, so I didn't expect to share. So, yeah, so thank you for being here, as always. Thank you for your beautiful consciousness. Um, One day I'm aspiring to that. Um, Jeffrey, my question is it's a mental question, and recently, well, for a few years now, I
Mhm.
I've been around people who have what I call a lot of conspiracy theories. Um, and I don't dismiss them because I actually don't know that I don't know, and that's really the bottom line for me. I actually don't know. Um, but they seem to be very adamant that whatever they are presenting is accurate. And so the last few ones, I don't know why it has affected me to some degree. That Hillary Clinton is not really Hillary Clinton. She died 5 years ago, and there's somebody else in her body, and um, the Premier of New South Wales, the Premier of Victoria is not really Victoria. He's got a mask on, and so it goes on. So inside of me, I have to go, look, I actually really don't know if any of this stuff is true or it's not true. But I always say to them, look, I don't really want to get involved in any of that stuff. My intention is soul transcendence, and I really don't care about any of that stuff. That's one thing. But then on the other side, I go, am I actually, just shutting off from what's really present? Because I heard one friend, and these are all in the movement, who said, well, JR said that you have to, you can be involved with that. You may need to take a step. I may need to sign a I don't know what you call it, but do you get what I'm saying? So I'm sort
Get
of
what you're
sitting
saying.
here, what's your take on all of that? What do you know about all of that?
About conspiracy theories?
Yeah.
Well, look, I I think it's a fraught subject. It's like the subject of cults because it's like from the perspective of Jews some 1800 years ago, Christianity was quite a cult, you know, and the Roman Empire thought that Christianity was quite a dangerous cult as well, so much so that they targeted people, right? Um, it, it's there's such a subjectivity in one sense, and I think at the end of the day, people believe what they're going to believe. And at the end of the day, for me, it's a question of does it work for you? I I I go out of my way actually. I have a friend who I literally talk to, older gentleman talk to once a week because I like his conspiracy theories. I don't know if they're true or not. He told me all these things about Anunnakis and like reptilians, all kind of crazy stuff like that. And I don't know if it's true or not. But I know that I love him and I know that I find it entertaining. To be
Well, I mean,
perfectly
I don't
honest,
know either. And I even said to this person last week, tell me, And I was really interested. Tell me how you come to that. I mean, what is it that makes you believe that? And the person just shut me down. I don't want to discuss it with you. And I did want to know how she comes to be believing this so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, it's a question of differentiating sense, intuition, feeling from fact-based assertions about reality. I think that a lot of conspiracy theories come out of a sentiment and a feeling that the system is rigged. And you know what? Physically, I would say yes, the system is definitely rigged. In almost every country, there is a rigged system. We say free markets, but it's really rigged markets. And that's
Yeah,
true. That's not a conspiracy theory.
I
I
get
think people everywhere feel a sense of disenfranchisement or feel a sense of being taken advantage of. But the truth is that's a metaphor for a larger rigging called the negative power.
that.
And the truth, for me, the truth of the matter is whether somebody believes in a religion or a conspiracy or theory or anything else, if it's something that's going to keep us in that cycle of transmigration, it just isn't worth my time. But if a set of conspiracy theories about this person and that person and Donald Trump and all this other stuff is going to help somebody get free, I'm all for it. You know, people ask me what my political beliefs are, and I say something, I just go, I'm for personal liberation.
Mm.
I I vote with personal liberation. So what does that mean in practice? That means, do I believe that when people are in a state of destitution or in a state of disability, they need support in some capacity? Yeah. Do I think a system that creates dependency and in practice, when you look at the data, actually keeps them down and doesn't create independence and upward mobility? Am I in favor of that? No. So it's kind of like I'm for
Yeah.
personal liberation, and we're constantly being asked to pick a side. And I don't think that there's really only one side, and that's God's side. And I look at like, well, what's God's side? Well, God's every side. God's for the soul. So I go, well, what about this level, or what about that? I'm for personal liberation. If there's no correlation between what somebody is imposing upon me or asking me to do to personal liberation, I tend to be somewhat resistant to it. I mean, there are things we have to do to cooperate on the physical level. But the truth is, I'm an equal opportunity disbeliever. I mean, it's funny, go like, am I overly skeptical with conspiracy theories? Well, I'm probably overly skeptical with just about everything. I mean, JR said, check it out. So I don't take anything said from anyone on face value. Not the media, not a president, not a statesman, not a conspiracy theorist. It's kind of equal opportunity. It's not a place of againstness, it's a place of personal responsibility. And I think we need to be very, very clear when we're dealing with this zone, like something being labeled a conspiracy theory or a cult or a this or a that is all about conventionality and what is acceptable.
Mm.
If we
Yeah.
looked at some of the things people believed 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, we would think people were crazy. It's the truth is we really don't know. And the more we understand how little we know about reality in this sense, the more we can be open to the one that knows. I think to the extent that somebody is hurting another person, though, I mean, I just go back to the ground rules. If somebody wants to believe in what you're calling a conspiracy theory, and it doesn't hurt anybody for them to do that, and it doesn't hurt themselves for them to do that, I'm all for it if it works for them.
Mm.
Now, if somebody's going to go out and bomb a place because they believe something, I take issue with that because I don't like bombs and I don't like hurting people. At the end of the day, there's no excuse to withhold our loving. And I think at a fundamental level, people who believe in a lot of what you're calling conspiracy theories, everybody has a fundamental aching to be one with God, to be one with the beloved, to know that as a practical reality. And not everybody has a vocabulary to describe that yearning in a way that allows them to find the actual solution. Oftentimes, people use metaphors for what they're going through inside of themselves. If the metaphor that works for them is a conspiracy theory, that's great. We work with what we know how to work with. And sometimes it's easier for people who are stuck in a field of cognitive dissonance to look at a world of conspiracies and all the other stuff than to look at how things are inside of them, or address some of the demons of their own consciousness. I don't think that's wrong or right. I have incredible compassion for everybody. Everybody suffers on this planet, and all suffering is connected to our forgetfulness of our divine nature. And I wish everybody peace and love and joy, that everybody could be free from just an ounce of that suffering and have one moment of knowing themselves as divine. And if believing in conspiracy theories gives them any respite from the torture chamber of their mind, if I don't have something as good or better to put in its place, I'm gonna leave it alone and I'm gonna love them even more. And I don't know. I mean, look, certain conspiracy theories like turned out to be true, right? That's the real wrench. It was like everybody said MK Ultra was no way. There's no way that the government could be dosing people with LSD without them knowing. That would just be crazy. It's like, yeah, but that did happen. Uh there were false flag attacks that were, and this is like published governmental papers. So the problem is, it's like, even if there is no conspiracy, it's kind of like everybody thinking all these things about pharmaceutical companies in specific instances, like recently with the pandemic. I'm sorry, but I can't blame people. Given the track record of pharmaceutical companies, I can understand why everybody's skeptical. It's We don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that pharmaceutical companies have our best interests at heart in many cases. They certainly have profit at heart.
Agree.
So I don't, so intellectual honesty says, I know what I know based on what I know based on my experience. And if I don't know, I'm not going to assert anything. But I'm also not going to dismiss people because they have theories that I consider a little bit out there. I'm going to listen because ultimately people will always reveal the healing that they seek if I just listen. And the healing that they seek is always the healing that I'm seeking. And together we heal ourselves by recognizing God in each other and loving each other. So for me, I mean, it's like I'm saying this as somebody who spends time intentionally with somebody who has out there theories about Anunnakis and all this other kind of stuff. And I love him and I love his theories and I find all of that incredibly entertaining. And God, it certainly beats hearing the same crap over and over on TV. You know, it's like you get to you get to hear a totally out there perspective and go, "Oh wow, that would be interesting if that were true." Maybe that, I don't know, maybe humans that were genetically engineered as labor force for the Anunnaki. Who knows? Who knows? Doesn't match my experience. And it's like, even if that was true, what would I do with that right now? And I constantly, whenever I hear something, I'm always asking, what am I going to do with this information right now that's for my highest good and the highest good of all concerned? And if I don't have a good answer to that, my answer is always just listen and love them and be entertained, for goodness sake, because humans and human karma are so terribly entertaining, especially once we're out of it looking back and we finally laugh about it. But when somebody's in it and they really believe it wholeheartedly and they're really, really into it and they're really, really passionate about it, I would just suggest that we all consider just loving and listening and honoring. And even if they're completely off track, that's a time for deep, deep compassion, because usually the need for that kind of an out there theory comes from a very legitimate and a very meaningful wound or sense of lack or sense of pain that is completely human, completely normal, completely lovable. And ultimately, that's what matters. It's, can we love that? Can we be there for that person? Can we love them regardless? And can we let them have the theory? There's probably people who think that I have very different perspectives and political beliefs that think I agree with all of them because I listen and I love them and I go, yeah, that sounds really interesting. That doesn't mean I'm buying, but I do find it very interesting. And people are what matter. Political beliefs don't matter. People are what matter. I used to have a lot of negative beliefs about Republicans until I found that pretty much only Republicans were the ones showing up down at the mission to serve food to people experiencing homelessness. So despite the fact that we disagree about who to vote for or policy this or policy that, these people are willing to put their money where their mouth is on a service level, and I have to love them as family when they do that. So I look at it and go, my political affiliation is currently I'm for personal liberation and loving people the way that they are. That's my political belief.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. That was very, very helpful. Thank you. God bless you. I love you.
Love you. And have fun, man. I'm telling you, some of the most
Yeah,
entertaining conversations I've ever had in my life.
I've missed that one, but I will start from now on.
I laugh with it. I go, tell me more. Like what you want detail. You got to ask for detail. It gets more and more interesting. Anyway, God bless you. Have a good day.
Love
God
you,
bless.
Jeffrey.
Thanks everybody.
Jeffrey, thank you so much.